In the 1890s, America realized that they could no longer expand west because they had reached the sea. Up until this point, Americans had been all about expanding and adventuring new lands, but since there was no more land to expand to, the government began to look for new ways to gain territory. They looked to European imperialist powers who had been expanding for decades and concluded that they needed to expand overseas and form colonies. Americans felt like they had a superior culture, so they looked for places that needed to be improved. They looked to inferior territories and imagined helping them become like America. During this time of new ideas, the idea of social Darwinism played a big role in the idea of expansion. Since Americans saw themselves as a superior culture and power, they believed that they were very fit, both politically and economically, compared to the other territories. From this, they concluded that they were able to take over other weaker territories because of the survival of the fittest idea, and they believed that they could help the weaker territories survive since they were a strong power. At this time, race was also a big idea, and the Americans believed that their race was superior over all other races. This idea of race superiority allowed Americans to come up with the idea that they were given the responsibility of spreading civilization to the inferior people of the world. There were three foreign policies that played a large role in the ideology of America's expansionist idea. They are the Big Stick policy, the dollar diplomacy, and the moral diplomacy. The Big Stick was a policy that was popularized by Theodore Roosevelt that asserted U.S. domination when such dominance was considered a moral imperative or something that must happen because it was considered the right thing. The policy came about when Roosevelt spoke of a West African proverb that he was fond of. He said, "Speak softly and carry a big stick. You will go far." This phrase became used by the press and cartoons to refer to Roosevelt's foreign policy that he used in Latin America and the Caribbean. This policy was also added to the Monroe Doctrine and allowed the United States to act as an international police power over the Western Hemisphere to prevent European powers from colonizing any further. How did the Big Stick policy work in different places? In Asia, there were conflicts between Manchurian and Korean posts that resulted in the Russo-Japanese War in 1904. A compromise was met with the Treaty of Portsmouth in 1905 when Roosevelt intervened and made the two compromise with each other. This intervention led to resentment from the Russians and Japanese. Russia blamed the United States for a major defeat of a European power by an Asian power, and Japan blamed the United States because it did not receive the protection it felt was deserved. In Latin America, Roosevelt participated in negotiations for the Panama Canal, which were very hostile. He sent ships to Panama to show Colombia that the United States was a present power there and was willing to use force on Colombia if they did not leave Panama alone. Since the U.S. provided financial aid to Panama during their fight for independence, the U.S. got to take over the building of the Panama Canal in 1904. In Europe, the creation of the Panama Canal led to a major criticism of the United States because Roosevelt showed his willingness to use force to get what he wanted. Controversy in the international world also sped up when Roosevelt intervened in a dispute between England, France, and Germany over territorial rights in Morocco. Criticism came about because the United States got involved in a fight that they were not part of in the beginning. In all three situations, other powers became upset with the United States because the United States was going wherever it wanted to take or stop whatever it wanted to. The United States got involved in negotiations and treaties that it had no business being in. The dollar diplomacy was a policy of using the U.S. government to guarantee loans made to foreign countries by American business people. This allowed America to use its financial power to spread its international influence. William Howard Taft interpreted this policy to mean that America should invest in other countries to make them open to U.S. policies. This policy also worked to keep other European countries' influence out of places where American business interests had developed. The moral diplomacy was Woodrow Wilson's idea to condemn imperialism, spread democracy, and promote peace. This idea suggested that the U.S. would only trade with other territories if they had a democratic government and American ideals. This allows American ideas to be strengthened and spread while it damages nations with different ideologies. This policy was used mainly in Latin America to give a push to an increase in democracy.